Hello, everybody. Welcome to topic 1.6, part 2. Trying to break it up a little bit for you so you don't have to do one big 35-minute video. We just did all of the shifters of demand. Now let's talk about the shifters of supply. Something to keep in mind whenever we're talking supply is really just think about cost. Is this increasing the cost of a good? If it is, remember supply is from the perspective of the producers. So if it's increasing cost, it means it's more expensive to produce, then the supply is going to shift left. And if it's decreasing cost from a supplier perspective, that means it's cheaper to produce, so I'm going to have more profitability, so supply is going to shift to the right. So whenever you're thinking, is this a shifter of demand or supply? If it's impacting the cost of the production of the good, then it's definitely shifting supply. It's got an inverse relationship. If costs are going down, supply is going right. If costs are going up, supply is going left. Let's dig in. So remember, whenever we're talking about shifters or determinants, we're talking about something that shifts supply at every single price, meaning that even businesses that were only willing to supply a few at a very high price are going to be willing to supply even more at a higher price. In other words, it's moving the needle all the way across the board. The businesses that can produce very cheaply supply more, and the businesses that it only makes sense for them to supply when the price is really high, they'll supply more as well. In other words, there's something outside of price that is impacting how much they are willing to supply. Okay, I think it'll make more sense once I go through the different shifters. Okay, shifter number one, and probably the most important one, the one we talk about the most, and you'll see on AP exams the most, the change in the resource price. Remember, any sort of input or resource has to be used, resources have to be combined to produce a good. So if the price of the resource I'm using increases, well, then I'm going to supply less. And if the price of the resource I'm using decreases, well, then I'm going to supply more. Remember, it's that cost principle we were just talking about. If costs are going up, supply shifts left. If costs are going down, supply shifts right. For example, let's say the price of oil rises. We know oil is a central ingredient and input for gasoline. So if the price of oil goes up, then the supply of gas is going to shift left. At every single price, we're going to supply less because it's more expensive to produce gasoline. Let's talk about labor. Let's say the wages of workers goes up. I now have to pay all my workers more. Workers are happy, woo, but that's a resource, right? And so when I have to pay more for my labor, supply is going to shift left. But if I outsource labor, my labor costs are going to go down. When labor wages go down, supply is going to shift to the right. Okay? So that's a change in resource price. It's pretty logical. Just think cost. Is it costing me more or less to produce this? And then supply will shift inversely. Okay, let's try it out. So milk prices increase after news reports that empty cartons can be modified and used as weapons in battles over territory, lunches, and pets. Oh man. So draw a graph that shows the impact of this on the latte market. The milk prices are increasing. Just assume that milk is used in the production of lattes. Okay, let's try it out. So if lattes are my market, so Latte, and I know the price of milk went up for milk. Milk is an input. So if the price of milk went up, is it more expensive or less expensive for me to make lattes? Of course, it's more expensive. If it's more expensive for a business to produce lattes, will they supply more or less in this market? And the answer, of course, is they will supply less. So we show this by drawing two arrows going to the left. When we do that, we then put in our parallel supply curve, S2. We have a new equilibrium where it intersects the demand curve. We dash over. What's happened to our prices? Prices have gone up. We dash down. What's happened to our quantity? Well, quantity has gone down. Got it? So when supply shifts left, there's fewer in circulation, it bids up the price, but also fewer are going to be bought and sold. So price falls. I'm sorry, woo, price rises and quantity falls when supply shifts to the left in this market. Okay. Remember, any sort of input, we'll have some practice with this, but any sort of input that is used for the production of a good the cost or price of that changes, then it's going to impact the supply in an inverse way. All right, let's keep going. The second one is probably the easiest, the simplest. It's a technological innovation. Any sort of innovation. We assume that technology can only make things better in economics. We know that there's some complications there, but we assume that technology only makes things better. So whenever there's new technology, we assume productivity is going up. When we're more productive with the same resources, our cost per unit fall, right? So productivity results in lower costs. My same three workers can produce more than they did before, so it's actually costing me less to produce each unit, if that makes sense. If that doesn't make sense, don't worry about it. Just remember technology results in an increase of supply every single time. Let's try it out. So there's new artificial intelligence technology has been proven to be incredibly more effective at counseling than humans. I just know that they care, says one patient. So draw a curve that shows the impact of this new technology on the counseling service market. All right, let's try this together. So we're going counseling service. We have a new technology where instead of using humans, we're using artificial intelligence to counsel people. So when that happens, we assume we are more productive. So we assume that businesses are going to supply more counseling as a result of this new innovation that makes them more productive. So supply is going to shift to the right. We show that by drawing two arrows and a parallel curve. An increase of supply is shifting to the right. Notice if you've memorized up and down, this is going to get confusing because you're going to say down is supply going this way, when in fact that's up, supply shifting right. So up is right, down is left. Always, always, always in supply and demand. Now we have a new equilibrium. And this makes sense. When there's more counseling, that competition bids prices down, but my quantity is going to rise. There's going to be more counseling around, right? The price is bid down because there's so much out there. So price is going to fall and quantity is going to rise. Notice these are always moving in opposite directions when we're talking about shift in supply, which is different than a shift in demand. When demand shifts right, price and quantity go up. When supply shifts right, quantity goes up, but price falls. Okay, let's keep going. Taxes and subsidies are next, basically government regulation. So if there's taxation on a business, an increase in taxes makes it more costly for them to do business. So supply is going to shift left. Pretty logical, right? A decrease in taxes makes it cheaper for them to do business. So supply is going to shift to the right because they can make more profit for each unit. Remember, taxes is just money. We call it leakage in economics. It's money that doesn't go to the business. It doesn't go to the consumers. It goes to the government instead. Leaks out of the circular flow, leaks out of our economy as a result. So when taxes are increased, it'll shift left. When taxes are decreased, it'll shift right. Again, think cost. Okay. On the flip side is a subsidy. A subsidy is when the government gives money away to businesses, right? We do this, the most famous one we've done is with our farming system with corn, right? The corn farmers were going out of business. They lobbied, they said, we won't vote for the next president if you don't give us a subsidy. And so the government now pays a couple of dollars per bushel to farmers just to produce corn, right? So when we have an increase in subsidies, it means businesses are getting money from the government. Does that make them more or less costly to do business? Well, it's less costly. When it's less costly, supply shifts right. If we decrease subsidies, then that means money I used to expect from the government, I don't get anymore, which makes it more costly for me to do business. We're going to be less profitable. As a result, I'm going to shift the curve to the left. Okay, so taxes and subsidies have opposite effects. If I increase taxes, it shifts left. If I increase subsidies, it shifts right. They are polar opposites. Let's try one out. After frequent and effective lobbying, the government subsidizes American motorized scooter business so that they can compete with the South Korean scoots. That is not a real product, but that is my proposal for a motorized scooter business, the Scoot. So draw a graph that shows the impact of this on the motorized scooter market if there's a subsidies for it. Okay, so I jump here. We got motorized scooters. I'm just going to call it MS. If there's a subsidy for motorized scooters, then it's going to be more profitable to make motorized scooters in the United States. As a result, there are going to be more scooters being produced. Also, notice when we talk about market, we're limiting that market to within the borders of a nation. So this is the United States motorized scooter market here. Okay, we have a new equilibrium where it intersects demand. When supply goes up, we have more motorized scooters, so that bids prices down. There's a bunch to choose from. Competition pushes prices down. But more scooters are going to be bought and sold in the United States. So when there's a subsidy, supply shifts right, price will fall, and quantity will rise. Okay, so far so good. Let's keep going. Okay, this one's a little confusing, so just bear with me here. Think of it this way. Every business can decide what they want to produce. They can produce the thing they're currently producing, or they can shift over and produce something else, right? And businesses do this all the time. We're seeing Uber right now transfer from producing or providing a lot of transportation services to now delivering food, the change in production. So think of that. Prices signal something. So if the price of another good are going up, it means people want that good. And so businesses are going to start shifting over to provide the thing that people want. Best example we have of this is in recent memory is probably the fidget spinner, right? No businesses were producing the fidget spinner, but then we saw the demand for fidget spinners go through the roof. Prices were rising for it. And businesses are like, we can produce that. And so they shifted over and they all started producing fidget spinners. Okay. So in the event that another good's price rises, fidget spinners over here, I'm going to shift over and start producing more fidget spinners. Supply is going to go right there. But what happens for the thing I'm currently producing? Supply shifts left. So if there's a higher price of another good, the current good I'm producing, I'm going to supply less of. Now, if another good is falls in price, the fidget spinner fell dramatically in price. Businesses stop producing fidget spinners. What do they produce instead? Well, they produce whatever else they could produce. So maybe it was sunglasses. The fidget spinner supply goes down, but the supply for sunglasses goes up as businesses stop producing fidget spinners and start producing sunglasses. Let's try an example and see if that helps. Maybe not. Do we not have? Oh, we don't have an example for that one. It's not common. We'll go over this in class though again. But remember, if the price of another good goes up, then the supply of my current good is going to go down. If the price of another good goes down, then the supply of my current good is going to go up. Inverse relationship there. What about producer expectations? Again, this one's a little bit confusing, but think of it this way. Businesses want to sell when the price is high. It's a lot like the stock market, right? As a consumer, when you own stocks, you're the supplier now. And so when the stock price goes really high, you want to sell. When the stock price goes really low, you want to buy, right? Same thing kind of happens with suppliers. If they expect the price in the future to go up, I expect the price to go up in the future. Well, I'm going to supply less today because I want to wait to produce the goods to sell them at that higher price in the future. I know I'm going to make more profit in the future. Why would I sell more today? So if I expect prices to rise in the future, I'm going to supply less today. If I expect prices to fall in the future, right? In the future, I expect that means demand's going to go down. I expect there to be less profitability in the future. Well, I'm going to supply more today because I want to sell it for that high price that we currently have, relatively speaking. Okay? That might be a memorization piece for you, but just think like a producer. If the price is going to be higher in the future, I don't want to sell it today. I want to sell it in the future. So I'm going to supply less today. If the price is going to fall in the future, I want to sell more today, so I'm going to supply more right now. Okay, let's try this one out. Market projections show that stuffed animal bear sales are slowing after recent mauling. That was me. And that this will most likely be accompanied by a drop in price. So I'm expecting the price of stuffed animal bears to go down in the future. Not right now, but in the future. Draw a graph that shows the impact of this on the supply of the stuffed animal bear. I expect prices to fall in the future. Okay, so stuffed animal bear, we're going to call, ooh, excuse me, stuffed bear, we'll call it SB. So if I expect the price to fall in the future, so future price is going to fall. If that's my expectation, then do I want to sell more bears today when the price is high or in the future when price is low? Today. And so supply is going to shift to the right because I want to supply more today to sell them for the relatively higher price. When that happens, we have a new equilibrium. Of course, you know when supply shifts right, price falls. And you also know that quantity rises. Okay, let's keep going. The final one is number of sellers, and this one should make some sense. When more businesses enter the market, then more is going to be supplied at every price. And when businesses leave the market, when they shut down, like what's happening right now with many restaurants in the restaurant business, when restaurants are shutting down, the supply is going to shift left. There's fewer restaurants. That's about as logical as it gets. So let's check this one out. Private universities are increasing dramatically in number. Simultaneously, consumers expect a recession and the corresponding drop in income soon. Draw a graph that shows the impact of this on the private university market. Okay, lots more universities, and then think, right, bringing in some demand here. Consumers expect a recession and are expecting a drop in their income. What's going to happen? Let's try this out. So we're doing, there we go, private universities. So we're going to PU, private universities. First thing I know is there's a lot more of them, right? Increase in sellers. So supply is going to shift to the right. However, at the same time, simultaneously, we expect a recession. If individuals, demanders, expect their incomes to fall, are they going to demand more or fewer tuitions, fewer private universities? They're going to demand more of this college or less of this college in aggregate. Of course, they're going to demand less. Remember, that's the income effect. In the event that I expect my income to fall, consumer expectations, then I'm going to demand less of normal goods. Okay? We're assuming private universities are normal, not inferior. So if that's the case, then demand is going to shift to the left. When I shift demand to the left, it looks like this. So I now have a new equilibrium. That equilibrium is right here, right? My quantity is actually going to be quantity question mark. I'll come back to that in a second. My price is definitely going to be P2, and it definitely fell, right? Because when supply shifts right, price fell. When demand shifted left, price fell again, right? However, quantity is what we call indeterminate. When supply shifted right, quantity went up. But when demand shifted left, quantity went down. So they're going in opposite directions. The easiest way to do this is simply go supply shifted right. What's that mean? Well, that means that price went down and quantity went up. Demand shifted left. What's that mean? Well, you've done this enough at this point. That means that price went down and quantity also went down. And then you compare. What happened with price? Well, price definitely went down. In both of these scenarios, price went down. So price for sure went down. What happened with quantity? We actually don't know. Quantity went up and quantity went down, right? So as a result, quantity is questionable or indeterminate. We do not know what is happening with quantity there. Okay, so again, that's an example of you don't know if it's going to be supply or demand. All you got to do is think about people involved. More universities, of course, that's going to be supply. Income, well, that's going to affect the demanders. Okay, let's keep going. Remember, whenever we have a change in price, it is not going to shift the curve. It's simply movement along the curve. So for example, if we went from $25 where we were producing 400 to $40, we're producing like 700. That is a change in price. It's just movement along the curve. It does not shift the curve. It has to be an outside factor it shifts a curve, like the number of sellers or the price of a resource. Okay? Again, remember for supply, just think, how's this impacting the cost of production? All right, let's keep going. Now, the double shift is probably one of the most confusing things for students initially, but once you get it, right? So let's check this out real quick. In this scenario, we started out right here, S1 and D1, right? I know that because I'm looking here, supply 1 and D1. That was my equilibrium, the intersection of those two curves. Then supply shifted right and demand shifted left. Supply shifted right. When supply goes right, what happens? Well, when supply goes right, let's do this in, well, let's see, pink. So we went here, S2, D2. Well, when supply went right, we noticed that the price fell. So price is going to go down. And we notice that quantity rose. So quantity is going to go up. When demand shifted left, what happened? Well, when demand shifted left, we'll do this in green. When demand shifted left, our quantity and price both fell. So demand went left, price fell, quantity fell. What happened? Well, we know definitely price fell, but quantity is going to be indeterminate. Price fell, quantity is indeterminate. We don't know if it's going to rise or fall. It just depends on how much of a shift occurred. Do that with each of these, right? We start off S1, D1. Find the first one. Supply shifted left, demand shifted left. In both of these cases, quantity falls dramatically, but price went up when supply shifted left. Price went down when demand shifted left. So as a result, price is indeterminate, right? There's that question mark. Again, down here, we start at S1 and D1. Supply shifted left, demand shifted right. Both of those caused price to rise, so price definitely went up. But when supply shifts left, quantity goes down. When demand shifts right, quantity goes up. And so quantity is going to be indeterminate. We jump down here. We start off at D1, S1. D1, S1 is way over here. Demand shifted to the right. When that happened, price went up. But when supply shifted right, price went down. So price is indeterminate. But quantity definitely rose because when demand shifts right, quantity goes up. And when supply shifts right, quantity goes up. So just puzzle it out if you're confused. Whenever you have a double shift, either price or quantity will be indeterminate every single time. Okay, how you guys feeling so far? Hopefully good. Let's keep going. The needles are found in strawberries, creating a panic in the strawberry market. Simultaneously, the price of strawberry fertilizer is cut in half. Eat your strawberry needle in the mouth. The impact of both determinants. Okay, so first, what's going on here? Strawberries are creating a panic because there are needles in them. Well, that's demand going down. There's a decrease in taste. The price of fertilizer is cut in half. That's supply going up. That's going to decrease the cost, which increases supply. So I have a double shift going on. Demand left, supply right. Let's try it out. So we got strawberries. Demand is going to be going left for strawberries. Absolutely, every single time we know that's going to be the case. But supply is going right at that same time. Why is supply going right? Well, that's because there's a decrease in the cost of fertilizer. So as a result, our new equilibrium is right here. What happened to price? Price definitely went down because when demand shifts left, price goes down. When supply shifts right, price goes down. But quantity is indeterminate. When the supply shifted right, quantity went up. When demand shifted left, quantity went down. We don't know which direction quantity went. All right, let's keep going. Final thing we're going to talk about is called disequilibrium. And this is when the government regulates. Oftentimes the government jumps in to try and help the consumers or help the businesses. Whenever the government creates price limits, we call them price ceiling or a price floor, they're going to cause disequilibrium. The problem is when it's a law, that disequilibrium, not like before when that disequilibrium naturally pushes us the price down or up, that disequilibrium is persistent and will stay and causes issues. Let's check it out. So in the event that the government initiates a price ceiling, Their goal is to help the demanders, right? So a price ceiling is actually lowering the price from where it is today. So think of it as a ceiling. You can't get any higher than that price. It's the ceiling on the price. So it cuts the price. What's going to happen is when you cut the price, demanders are going to want a whole lot more. Makes sense. But suppliers aren't going to want to supply very much because they can't make profit. A lot of quantity demanded, not very much quantity supplied is going to create a shortage. And that shortage will persist, right? So as a result, a shortage happens. Low price, high quantity demanded, low quantity supplied. We have a shortage. And who gets what? Normally, it's actually first come, first serve when there's a shortage like this in the marketplace. Whoever gets there first can get it all. And there's going to be somebody who's enterprising who's going to get there first and buy as much as they possibly can. And then they're going to go down on the street corner and they're going to resell it for a higher price. We call that a black market. And we've seen this time and time again, right? We saw it with rent controls, which is a price ceiling on rents in New York City. When that happened, the price was really low. There's a shortage of apartments in New York City for those people. As a result, some people, we call them slumlords today, would buy up a bunch of these apartments at that low price, would sell them for that low rent, but would accept bribes and bonuses and services and all kinds of other things to get additional profits from it. Okay? So black markets arise out of persistent shortages caused by price ceilings. Let's try one out. So bananas are $5 a pound in the free market. So the impact of government price ceiling on bananas of $1. All right, let's try this out. So we're going to assume, let me change colors here so it's a little more visible. Oops, go back. We're going to assume that this price is $5 because they told us that. Now the government sets a price of $1, which we know is way below this. Who are they trying to help in the banana market? They're trying to help the consumers, right? Lower price for consumers. So let's dash across. This we'll call a price ceiling, label it PC. And this price ceiling, now we are at disequilibrium. We're no longer producing here. We dash across, we hit our first point. Price cannot go any higher than $1. It is a ceiling, right? Cuts it off. So the first point we hit is the supply curve. And that's going to be our quantity supplied, which is going to be really low, right? Quantity supplied has decreased. Then we keep on dashing. We hit our second curve over here, disequilibrium. And that's my demand curve. Quantity demand is going to be high. That makes sense. Price is very low. People are going to want a bunch of bananas. Very few bananas are being produced. The result is a shortage, right? Quantity demanded is less, or quantity demanded is greater than quantity supplied, creating a shortage. And that will be persistent. An enterprising person will come in, buy up all the bananas and resell them outside of the store on the street corner for a much, much higher price and result in profitability. That's the black market there. Okay, so shortage persistent because of government regulation. Now, there's another side of this. There could be a price floor. Price floors are often to help producers, or they're used to discourage the consumption of something. We actually have an effective price floor on alcohol. We don't want alcohol to be so cheap that people can get drunk cheaply. So we say you have to sell it for this price. You cannot sell it for less. It's a floor. You can't get through it. Okay, let's try one out. There's a corn farmer and they're losing their farms as a market price for a unit of corn has fallen to 25 cents. That's initial market price. Show the impact of government price floor of $5. All right, let's check this out. Again, our market price is going to be 25 cents, 0.25, because they told me that's the current market equilibrium. Now the government comes in and says, hey, we want to save the farmers. To save the farmers, we're not going to let you sell corn for less than $5 a unit, right? That way the farmers get much more profit and they can stay in business. Makes sense, right? But now we are no longer at equilibrium. We're going to be at disequilibrium. So we dash this across, call this PF or price floor. It's a floor because you cannot get below it. You cannot, right? So we dash over, we hit our first curve. And dash down, that first curve we hit is our demand curve. So this is quantity demanded. And that should make sense. Quantity and demand have fell dramatically because the price went way up. Corn's super expensive. I'll just buy something else. Keep on dashing across and hit our second curve. That's our quantity supplied. Farmers are going to increase their quantity they produce because, hey, we're going to be able to sell this for $5. We're going to make a ton of money. And new businesses will enter the market and all that stuff. As a result, the quantity demand is very low, the quantity supplied is very high, and we have a surplus. And this surplus will persist. We'll continue to have a surplus because this is a government regulation. It won't naturally bid the prices down. So right now in the United States, this is a true story. We have all kinds of extra corn. So the government buys tons of corn and stores it, and they incentivize, they require some corn ethanol to be in gasoline. They used to require corn to be in a lot of food products because they're trying to get rid of this corn. And so they just keep regulating to try and get rid of all this extra corn, but we keep on overproducing. So that's a surplus caused by a price floor. Again, just think, is the price above or lower than equilibrium, right? If it's above equilibrium, it's going to cause a surplus. If it's below equilibrium, it's going to cause a shortage. As long as it's a government regulation, that surplus or shortage will persist. Okay, that's it. Check out Khan Academy 1.6, Market Equilibrium and Disequilibrium. Until next time.